Hello there. This is Bernie Merton again. And today we start a new chapter in the book of Genesis. You see, the creation week ended in verse 3 of chapter 2. And today we start in verse 4. I'll try to make it in one session, but it will probably be a two-parter. So let's start. These are the generations. That verses 2. Chapter 2, verse 4 to 10, the first part. These are the generations of the heavens and of the earth when they were created. In the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens. Yup. And every plant of the field. Now, you see, here we see the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens. Well, folks, here is talking about an age, isn't it? It's not just talking about a 24-hour day. So you see, it's governed by how you say it. Evening and morning is one day, right? But now, the day that the Lord made the earth and the heavens. Folks, we're talking the whole week. So here it's an age, isn't it? And every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew, for the Lord God had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground. But there went up a mist from the earth, and watered the whole face of the ground. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living soul. And the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden. And there he put the man whom he had formed, and out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight, good for food. The tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And a river went out of Eden to water that garden. Now, when I went to university, it was not a Christian university where I first went. We studied the Bible as a work of literature. And when we came to this, we were saying that there are two creations. But that's not the case. What we read here is a detail of one particular part of creation. And that is the creation of man. Now he formed a man, not the male and female as we read before. And that's why it's in detail, the detail of how he did it. Verse 4 would be marking the real start of chapter 2, and that it says, these are the generations of, and so on. Now, what does that mean? This phrase serves to mark main subdivisions of the book of Genesis. This phrase, these are the generations of blank, occur at Genesis 2, verse 4, Genesis 5, verse 1, Genesis 6, verse 9, Genesis 10, verse 1, Genesis 11, verse 10 and 27, Genesis 25, verse 19, Genesis 36, 1 and 9, and finally Genesis 37, verse 2. In all, except the first occurrence of the phrase which we read, the name of a specific patriarch is attached first. Now, in verse 4, the patriarch is God. Now, the word generations, what does that mean? It means birth of a descended or started from. Birth of, or descended, or started from. Generations. It relates to the beginnings of God creation here. It is God telling us, hey, this is my side of the account of the creation. It is a historical account given by God himself to Moses about man. It is an account of the creation in both summary and detail. Note, man was not in existence to witness the creation of man. Neither was he there to witness any kind of creation whatsoever. Here we are also introduced to Lord, capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D. Lord here refers to what we normally in English call Jehovah. It literally means, I am, or I am the self-existent one. Literally, verse 4 would end as, the I am God made the earth and the heavens. This is the first appearance of the name of God in the Bible, in all the Bible. It directly follows the creation, reminding us not to worship the creation, but to worship the Creator. Notice also, God's creation was self-sustaining. God mentions rain, but in the days before the flood, there was no rain. We see in verse 6 how God caused the earth to be watered. Could the word rain be a hint of the coming changes to the world after the fall at the flood of Noah? That's foreknowledge. But then again, it might not be foreknowledge because Moses wrote this, right? God was also describing the word after creation, but before the flood. Now, as we saw back in Genesis 1, 9 to 10, it was a different earthly environment. There was a huge vapor canopy above the earth. The moisture came down as a mist and watered everything. Now this vapor canopy protected the earth from the harmful rays from the sun and space. This is probably why the Bible records that people lived hundreds of years. Now, after the flood, you see, we're talking ahead here. That vapor canopy was broken up and came down to help flood the earth. Now, after the flood, there was rain, thunderstorms, tornadoes, etc. Also, since the harmful rays from the sun and space were no longer blocked, mankind's general lifespan was shortened to under 100 years. So, verse 5. Let's see, verse 5. And every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew, for the Lord God, he created it. After the flood, there you go. So verse 5 specified certain types of plants and herbs. They were of the field. So he had already created a whole bunch of herbs, but this is herb of the field. What does that mean? They were of the field speaks of cultivation by mankind. There are fruits that are cultivated by mankind, and there are fruits that grow wild. Along with the reference to rain, there was a reference to man tilling the ground. Rain looked forward to the flood, and the tilling of the ground looked forward to the coming fall of man, which we are going to get to. When mankind was no longer abiding under God's rest, when the man was resting and fellowshipping and having a personal encounter and relationship with his or her Creator. That's what we find now. That man was having a personal relationship with his Creator. In verse 7, we see more details of the creation of mankind that already happened in Genesis chapter 1. Notice that humans consist of the dust of the ground. The Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground. It wasn't confirmed by science until about 300 years ago. Listen to this. The Bible already spoke about scientific facts before science ever acknowledged it. Here we also get a special mention of a special breath, unique to man. The animals became living when they were formed. But after man was formed, God personally breathed into him the breath of life. Man, as well as possessing a soul, has a spirit. That's special. Man was placed into the specially created Garden of Eden, where God grew every tree that is pleasant to the sight, good for food. The tree of life was also in the middle of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We're going to come to that later. All these trees were specially cultivated by God for the Garden of Eden, just for man to enjoy. On top of that, all this wonderful food was accompanied by fresh, spring-fed water. Folks, right from the beginning, God showed his love for mankind by placing him in the most beautiful garden. We're going to continue next with what happened.